Etsy used to be the place for handmade sellers, but now not so much. Between fees, account restrictions, and changing rules and policies, competing with dropshippers and resellers, now it's more of a headache than a help. Today, I'm breaking down why I put my Etsy shop on vacation mode and why I haven't looked back. 2023 was my last year selling on Etsy, and I have had my Etsy shop on vacation mode ever since. I put my shop on vacation mode because I just wasn't making much money, and I was trying to compete with dropshippers, resellers, and other shops that had been around longer, and it was just becoming oversaturated. I had started selling on Amazon Handmade in 2018, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't keep up with what Amazon needed to keep my products in Prime and selling my own orders that I'm fulfilling myself and keep up with Etsy for the 2 or 3 orders that I would actually get. It just wasn't worth it with the fees I was paying to them. Because Etsy has a different fee structure than Amazon, that was one of the reasons why I put my Etsy shop on vacation mode. So let's talk about the rising cost of Etsy and the way that their fee structure is currently situated. So I have a full video, which is still completely true to this day, about the costs associated with Etsy and the costs associated with Amazon Handmade, and I break the fees down a little further, so you can go check that video out. But I wanted to touch on it a little bit here since that's one of the reasons why I put my shop on vacation mode. On Amazon Handmade, just doing your own listings and selling and fulfilling orders yourself, not using Prime, you have a standard 15% referral rate, and that's all you pay. The customer pays for the shipping if that's how you want to set it up, and I have it set up to where if they, just like on Etsy, if they spend over $35, they get free shipping no matter what. So you can set it up that way on Amazon so that your customer still doesn't need to pay shipping if you don't want them to. And because it's only a 15% fee, a lot of times that fee ends up being lower than what it would be if I was selling on Etsy. So let's kind of break it down a little bit. So on Etsy, you have a transaction fee, processing fees, advertising fees, listing fees. There's all these like individual little fees floating around that unless you really do some research, you may not know exactly how much you're spending when someone purchases an item on Etsy. We all know that there's a listing fee of 20 cents, and that's one of the ways that Etsy makes its money, even if you have a listing sitting there not selling. On Amazon, you don't pay a listing fee. You create your account. It's $39.99 up front, but as soon as you're approved for Handmade, that fee gets waived. So there's no monthly or listing fee associated with items in the Amazon Handmade storefront. Now, when you make a sale on Amazon, you will pay a 15% referral fee. But if you sell that same product on Etsy, you're gonna pay a double transaction fee, you're gonna pay a processing fee and a listing fee, just to name a few. There's one other fee for advertising that you can choose to use or not on both platforms. But with Etsy, if you sell more than, I think it was like $10,000 worth of product, you're required to use off-site ads and you can't turn it off. Etsy's not very good about sharing what you're spending with advertising. So when I go into my Etsy stats page and try to figure out how much I'm paying for advertising, it just says, hey, your daily budget was $5 and you made a sale based on an ad. So I don't know what product sold, what was advertised, and how much I paid for that advertisement. So while my daily budget is set at $5, they could be spending the full $5. It could be that $5 on that one whole order. I'm gonna show in a little bit a breakdown of one item sold on both platforms so you can kind of see the difference in the fees. Etsy does look lower, but when you add in the advertising, because I'm gonna leave the advertising out, but when you add in the advertising, you'll see that Etsy is way more expensive than Amazon. So let's talk about that item. So I chose a $9 item to kind of break this down because that's a lot of what my listings are on Amazon. And I do have a couple that were on Etsy that were $9, so it's easy to break it down. So, and I'm gonna look at my notes because it's a lot of numbers, especially for Etsy. With Etsy, you've got your listing fee, your transaction fee, and your processing fee. And there's actually 2 transaction fees. There's one for the item and one for the shipping. Yes, Etsy charges you a transaction fee on your shipping. So you need to keep that in mind when you're listing your products on Etsy, that you've got that extra fee in there. It's only a few cents, but that takes money away from the shipping costs that you had determined that you needed to charge for your items. And Etsy likes for you to use the weight of an item to determine the shipping cost. So that does affect that, because that means you can't use just that weight. You need to tick it up a bit to cover that fee. The total of the fees on Etsy ends up being $1.72. That is the transaction fee for shipping, the processing fee, and the listing fee. So the listing is 20 cents. So the processing fee for this item, which is 3% of the order total plus an extra 25 cents, is 67 cents. The transaction fee, which is 6.5% of the total, is 59 cents. And the transaction fee on the shipping is another 6.5%, which is 26 cents. And then you've got your listing fee of 20 cents. So all of those added together is $1.72. Like I said, I didn't count the advertising in this because unless you're making $10,000 plus on Etsy, you're not required to do any kind of advertising at all. And you don't have to advertise at all on Amazon if you don't want to. So if you look at Amazon, the 15% referral fee, and this is right inside your Seller Central, so you don't even have to calculate it. It gives you an estimate of the fees. A $9 item is estimated to have fees of $2.03. So it is a little bit higher than Etsy, but let's add in that advertising, because the item I was looking at, I actually sold in 2023, and I went back and pulled my advertising to see what I was doing. I was doing a $5 a day budget, and it said that I got an order from my advertising. So I can only assume there was one order that day, that the item that I was looking at was that item. So if I have to add in that whole $5 because they don't do a cost per click and they don't show you a breakdown of what that ad cost me to sell that product. So when you add in that $5, that $9 item now is $4. And we're gonna take that $1.72 out of the $4. So I'm down to next to nothing for a $9 item. So that's something to keep in mind with Etsy, that they don't really share their advertising. And that was just an Etsy ad, that wasn't an offsite ad. Offsite ads may be a little bit more expensive. Well, I know they're gonna be more expensive than the Etsy ads, but like I said, we don't know what those costs are. I will say that if I advertise on Amazon, it's a cost per click. And my current bid is set for like 20 cents. So I don't have to guess at what my ad is and what my spend is, because they do cost per click. I have a daily budget, but I also have a cost per click maximum. So I don't spend any more than 20 cents each time someone clicks on an ad. So that's a little bit of the difference between the advertising. Like I said, I'm just paying the referral fee and then that 20-cent bid. So if at most it's $2.23. So something to keep in mind if you're listing on Etsy and Amazon, how to kind of compare the fees and what that would look like. So number 2 is the increased account restrictions and unpredictability. A lot of even established sellers are finding themselves with their account restricted. Been there, done that. And a lot of them are finding their account suspended. When you have a restriction, it's pretty easy to figure out what you need to do. Mine was because I had an unpaid balance and my card was expired. So I just went in, put in my new card information, it paid my balance, and I was fine. Now, if I'd let that sit there for even longer, they probably would have suspended my account. So something to keep in mind, there's other sellers who have had their shop suspended because they have multiple shops. A lot of people will have 2 shops, especially if they sell a lot of items, to test other types of items or different types of advertising or marketing or different photos or whatever. They will have a second shop just to do testing of products. So it doesn't affect the reach of their current shop, because we don't really know, like in the algorithms, even with Amazon, you don't really know the full algorithm, so you don't know how it's affecting the shop as a whole. So they will have test accounts for that kind of thing. A lot of people have found that if that shop gets shut down, the other shop that's making all the money will also get shut down, because they are linked. And Etsy can see the IP addresses and they know that you have 2 shops, even if you don't disclose it. Once you're suspended, Etsy basically won't talk to you. Have been a lot of sellers that have said, my shop's been suspended. I tried to reach out to Etsy and they basically just said, you've been suspended. We don't care about you anymore. Keep that in mind, that while a restriction may be easy to figure out, a suspension is not. And I will say some of these sellers are doing copyright infringement or violating other policies that Etsy has in place. but they're not very forthcoming with why your shop gets suspended. They don't give you any information, and they don't even give you a chance to fix it. So if you've had a copyright infringement before, they may give you a couple of chances to not have a copyright infringement. And then if they see it again, they'll just shut your whole shop down because they don't want to fool with it. So something to keep in mind when you're listing on Etsy. Amazon, on the other hand, will take down individual listings. Now, I'm sure there is a point where if you had a ton of trademark or copyright infringements that they may shut your shop down. I've hit a trademark thing before, and basically they take the listing down, and you can reach out to support and say, why is this being taken down? Or it will be spelled out in the email, because they'll actually send you an email and say, hey, your listing was removed because of this. If it doesn't give you a lot of information, you can reach out to support and say, hey, my listing was removed. This is what the email said, but I don't fully understand it. And they will give you more detail. And they're very forthcoming with, why they took it down, because they want their sellers to succeed. They want them to make money because that's how they make money. So it's a very open, transparent process. And if you have your listings pulled, it typically takes about 24 hours for it to get put back up because it needs to re-hit the system. I don't know of very many shops that Amazon has actually, handmade even, that Amazon has shut down completely and not given a full reason as to why. The third one is Etsy's push for the offsite ads and kind of their priorities for their sellers. So it does feel like that Etsy is prioritizing the larger shops because they're forcing them to do the ads, and you're not forced to do them as a smaller shop. But they're also not very transparent, like I said, with how much you're actually spending. So even some of these larger shops are finding that they're not selling as many products because they're keeping their daily budget very low, and Etsy's probably penalizing them for that. We don't know for sure because Etsy's not very upfront. That's to say that, they could be penalized for keeping their daily budget low. And on Amazon, you don't have to advertise at all. You advertise if you want to. I have found that advertising some products does help, and it does drive some traffic to my store and to my products, but you don't have to advertise if you don't want to. Some products are just gonna be searched more than others, and some product categories don't have as many listings. So you may, using the right keywords, you may show up higher in search just organically and not need to advertise. The fourth thing is why Amazon Handmade became my solution. With Amazon Handmade, I had more control over the fees I was paying and more control over my pricing and how I wanted to sell my items. I had more control of what I wanted to list, and I wasn't penalized for putting a listing up and it not selling anything. I had a lot of listings in my Amazon right from the jump, and a lot of them didn't sell at all. And I left them up for a very long time, just waiting to see if they would sell, or what was selling well on Amazon versus Etsy, because it is a different type of buyer. When a lot of these listings weren't doing well, then I just closed them and took them down, but there was really no reason to take them down because it doesn't cost you anything to list them on Amazon. I will say that I have left my Etsy shop on vacation mode. I've considered bringing it back, but it's not something that I've done just because I'm so busy with Amazon. In 2024, I grossed over $62,000 in sales on my products, and most of that was due to Prime or fulfilled by Amazon, and it's products that I could not have kept up with on my own. I truly believe Amazon Handmade is the best place to be. In 2023 on Etsy, I did just over $2,000. So that shows you the difference in how much my shop has grown in the past few years just doing Amazon Handmade alone. And that is with very little social media marketing or anything like that trying to push traffic to my shop. If you're ready to join a marketplace full of millions of buyers, I'm here to support you. You can also join the waitlist for Prime for Success, my new course where we're gonna go through everything about your shop. We're gonna go more in depth on these topics that we've been talking about here on YouTube. There's gonna be a Slack channel. You can get listing critiques and shop critiques, and we're gonna go a lot deeper into Amazon and how you can run your shop in the best way to make the most money. Join the waitlist, come over and hang out, and I am so excited to see you succeed on Amazon Handmade. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.